We were told by Marvel repeatedly that Fantastic Four was a new start and a really important moment for the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Not only was this movie going to blow your mind, but it was also going to lead into Avengers Doomsday, this massive team up that Marvel is spending so much money putting together.
Doing fantastic at the box office. Its opening weekend was good enough. It well outperformed Thunderbolts and Captain America Brave New World from earlier this year, but its second weekend saw a 66% drop-off, which is a bad number.
This movie, Fantastic Four, the lead-in needed to be big for them. Unfortunately, that was not the case. After a rather pedestrian and weak opening weekend, it fell off hard at the box office. A box office collapse in its second weekend. And the past couple weekends have not really helped this movie too much either. As you can see, it's sitting at just under $470 million worldwide. We can look here. We see a 44% drop, not quite as bad as the last couple weeks, following two consecutive 60% drops for them. But it is now starting to lose steam, both domestically and internationally.
Imagine landing a dream role in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. You get cast. You show up on set. You're suddenly part of one of the biggest franchises in movie history. For many actors, that's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Normally, you'd expect them to gush about the film, hype it up, and shower it with endless praise, whether it deserves it or not. But in the case of Fantastic Four, First Steps, something truly unusual happened. One of the actors who starred in the movie took to Letterboxd, the popular movie review site, and left his own rating for the film. And not just any rating, but a pretty average 3.5 stars out of 5.
One of the actors in the film has given it a 3.5 star review. So funny. So funny. Now, I will say, could this be a publicity stunt? Maybe, but I don't think so. So it's this chap, Paul Walter Hauser. He's the guy that played Mole Man, right? So he was given a 3.5 star review of the Fantastic Four. Quote, "I wish they hadn't cut my scene." And this is why I don't think it is a PR stunt. Like, yeah, I don't think it's a PR stunt. It's so funny. So not only has this been a box office bomb.
For Marvel, a studio built on hype and fanfare, that's almost like a shot across the bow. Because let's be real, when the people inside the MCU start reviewing their own movies like casual fans, you know something unusual is going on. And the internet, they absolutely lost it. The actor at the center of this viral storm is Paul Walter Hauser, a name that might not immediately scream Marvel superstar, but if you've seen films like Richard Jewell, I, Tonya, or even the Disney movie Cruella, you know this guy can deliver memorable performances. In Fantastic Four, First Steps, Hauser stepped into the role of Mole Man, a somewhat oddball villain with a tiny slice of screen time.
Which it has been objectively, which we'll get into a little bit as well. But now even the actors are like, well, you know, not particularly great. So Paul Walter Hauser made his MCU debut as Mole Man in the Fantastic Four First Steps, and despite his brief screen time, he emerged as a highlight of the movie thanks to his hilarious scene in the Baxter Building. It was all mediocrity. He was fine. So Mole Man was originally going to feature more prominently.
Now here's where things take a turn. After the film's release, instead of just sitting back and collecting his paycheck, Hauser logged onto Letterboxd, the popular film review platform where movie buffs rate and review what they watch, and left his own score for the movie. His verdict? 3.5 stars out of 5. At first glance, that rating doesn't sound dramatic. It's not a scathing 1-star takedown, nor is it an overly generous 5-star gush fest. But here's why it blew up across social media. Actors never do this. Think about it. The unwritten rule of Hollywood is simple. You hype up your project no matter what. You post the behind-the-scenes selfies. You praise you. Co-stars, you talk about how incredible the director's vision is, and you always act like you just made cinematic history.
So Mole Man was originally going to feature more prominently, but director Matt Shakman has previously revealed that he cut a scene with Sue Storm paying a visit to the villain's home in Subterranea in an effort to forge a truce. So Hauser's now taken to Letterboxd to share his review of First Steps, and he gave the movie 3.5 stars. Now they're saying this is a solid rating. I mean, not really, it's not.
Even if the critics torch it, even if the fans roast it on Reddit, actors typically hold the line with endless positivity. Hauser didn't. He actually reviewed his own movie like a regular filmgoer. And he didn't just drop a star rating. He added details. He admitted that he wished his scene with Vanessa Kirby hadn't been cut, giving fans an inside peek at what they didn't get to see. At the same time, he highlighted positives like the score, the production design, and some of the performances, showing that he wasn't being a hater, just balanced. That balance is what made it land so hard. Instead of corporate spin, fans got honesty. And that honesty struck a nerve because it matched what so many people were already thinking.
Brand Marvel used to sell tickets in and of itself. It almost didn't matter what the movie was. People were interested because they were so bought into the MCU. And in particular, late into phase 3, it was just people trusted they were going to get a good movie. Or
just to remind you, it wasn't even a week ago that Deadline magazine was projecting a $48 million second weekend, a 60% drop from the first weekend. And then over the next few days after that, it became a 45 to 47 million.
Fantastic Four: First Steps wasn't a total disaster, but it wasn't the groundbreaking masterpiece Marvel wanted it to be either. The internet's reaction to Hauser's review was nothing short of hilarious. Within hours of his Letterboxd post being noticed, screenshots and memes started spreading like wildfire. One popular joke summed it up perfectly. "That's the most I got paid, had fun, but let's be real here, rating I've ever seen." And honestly, that nailed it. Hauser wasn't dragging the movie through the mud, but he also wasn't pretending it was flawless. His score landed in that awkward but honest middle ground that felt way more real than the polished sound bites we're used to from Marvel actors.
That are just really beginning to actually have a lot of Marvel fatigue and Pedro Pascal fatigue. That is very much real. And like I said earlier, his politics, his overall view on activism, it is not helping at all in the least when it comes down to Marvel and Disney. And the fact that Marvel and Disney allows him to go on that train wreck of viewing, of course, or spewing his politics into the public eye, it goes to show you that they really don't care at all.
Normally, when a Marvel film drops, the cast jumps on social media like a synchronized PR machine. You'll see Instagram stories of red carpets, endless tweets about how this is the most epic Marvel adventure yet, and interviews where every actor insists that fans are in for the ride of their lives. Even in cases where the final product doesn't live up to expectations, the stars rarely let their true feelings slip. That's why Hauser's review hit different. It was casual, unfiltered, and just human. Yeah, it's fine. Not amazing, not terrible, just fine. That's literally the tone fans read from his review. And the comedy in it all? It made Marvel look, for once, vulnerable. Like the giant polished machine that usually dominates pop culture had sprung a tiny leak. Fans couldn't get enough of that image. Instead of Marvel towering over everything with unshakable confidence, here was one of their own actors basically shrugging his shoulders. The memes practically wrote themselves. People joked that Mole Man's real villain move was exposing the movie for what it really was. Others laughed that Hauser's 3.5 stars might actually have been too generous. What made it even funnier is that his review didn't come across as bitter or vengeful. He wasn't salty about being cut down to a cameo. He even said he was grateful to be part of Marvel. But that touch of honesty, acknowledging flaws while also acknowledging the fun, felt like a normal moviegoer's take, and fans absolutely reveled in it. It was like seeing the curtain pulled back for just a moment, and behind it wasn't some big Marvel conspiracy. It was just a guy who got cast in a superhero movie and then reviewed it like the rest of us would. Whenever something unexpected happens in the world of Marvel, the first reaction online is usually, "Is this marketing?" And Hauser's review was no exception. Almost immediately, threads popped up across Reddit and Twitter, asking whether this could be a calculated stunt to generate buzz for Fantastic Four: First Steps. After all, Marvel has been struggling with fan fatigue lately, and a quirky moment like this could, in theory, be spun as free publicity. Maybe Marvel thought that embracing a little self-deprecating humor would win back skeptical audiences. But when you look closer, that explanation doesn't really hold water. For one thing, Marvel doesn't usually rely on their actors making jokes at the film's expense, especially not publicly. They prefer tight control of the narrative, and something as unpredictable as an honest star rating would be risky. On top of that, Hauser included a very specific complaint in his review, that a scene with Vanessa Kirby had been cut. That's not the kind of detail Marvel would encourage. If anything, that sort of comment shines a spotlight on decisions that the studio would rather keep quiet. It almost reads like mild shade toward the director and editor, which makes it very unlikely that Disney's PR department signed off on it. Another reason it doesn't feel staged is Hauser's personality itself. He's always been a bit of an unconventional actor, often picking quirky roles and approaching them with humor. Him casually logging into Letterboxd and posting a review fits with the way fans already perceive him. If it were a big-name Marvel star with a huge contract, like Chris Evans or Brie Larson, then maybe it would smell like manufactured buzz. But Hauser? This felt authentic, and that's exactly why it resonated. People are tired of the feeling that everything in Hollywood is scripted, not just the movies, but the interviews, the tweets, even the candid moments. Hauser's review broke that mold. Instead of sounding like a PR pitch, it sounded like a friend telling you, "Yeah, I was in it. It was all right. Could have been better, but I had fun." That's not how Marvel usually markets their movies, and that's why fans found it so refreshing. In the end, most people agreed, this wasn't a stunt. This was just an actor being real. And ironically, that honesty did more to generate buzz than any carefully planned ad campaign could have. To really understand why this moment stung Marvel, you've got to look at the numbers. Fantastic Four: First Steps has crossed around $450 million worldwide, which for most films would be a massive success. But for Marvel, with its enormous production budgets, sky-high marketing costs, and decades of fan expectations, that number is closer to a disappointment. For context, it's struggling to even catch up with Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, a movie many fans consider one of Marvel's weakest entries. And the idea that an MCU reboot of Fantastic Four, one of Marvel's most iconic properties, is barely scraping by financially is a huge warning sign. So when Hauser's meh review dropped, it wasn't just funny. It was like throwing gasoline on a fire that was already burning. Instead of Marvel controlling the narrative, the internet made his review part of the larger story of the film underperforming. Part of Hauser's honesty came from the fact that his character didn't even get the screen time originally planned. According to director Matt Shakman, there was supposed to be a bigger subplot involving Mole Man and Sue Storm. In one cutscene, Sue actually visits Mole Man's underground lair, Subterranea, to try and forge a truce. That would have given Hauser a lot more to do, and maybe even left room for his character to return in future films. But when that scene was cut, Mole Man was reduced to little more than a cameo. And you can tell Hauser wasn't thrilled about that. In his review, he mentioned wishing they hadn't cut the moment with Vanessa Kirby. It wasn't bitter, but it was honest. And again, that's what made it stand out. Instead of pretending everything went perfectly, he admitted the movie could have been stronger with that storyline intact. Fans love that level of transparency, especially when so much of Hollywood feels overly polished and fake. Once Hauser's review went viral, the memes came flooding in. One popular comment said, Guess he was the mole after all. Others joked that 3.5 stars was the polite way of saying, I had a good time, but let's not lie to ourselves. Some fans worried he might have just ended his chances at future Marvel roles. But the reality is, Marvel cycles through villains so fast that Mole Man was never going to be a long-term player anyway. Others praised Hauser for being brave enough to go against the grain, saying it was refreshing to see an actor treat the project with the same honesty fans would. And that's part of why his review had so much staying power online. It wasn't just the number of stars he gave, it was the energy behind it. You could almost hear him shrugging as he typed it out. And that gave the internet endless meme material. If you step back and look at the bigger picture, Hauser's review raises a much larger question about Marvel's current state. For years, the MCU was untouchable. Even mediocre films would get praised endlessly, at least by the cast and crew. But lately, cracks have been showing. Audiences are growing more critical. The box office numbers aren't what they used to be. And now, even actors are starting to break away from the overly positive script. When one of your own stars casually admits the film is just okay, it reflects what audiences are already feeling. And that's the real danger for Marvel. Because if the people making these films aren't hyping them with full enthusiasm, how can fans be expected to? In a way, Hauser's 3.5-star rating has become symbolic. It perfectly represents the current Marvel era. Not terrible, but definitely not at the legendary heights the studio once commanded. At the end of the day, Paul Walter Hauser didn't trash the movie. He didn't call it Fantastic Four, or Mole Man, or even one review on Letterboxd. It's about the shift happening inside the MCU itself. When the people living in the Marvel universe are starting to rate their own movies like casual fans, it says something deeper. Maybe the golden age of automatic Marvel hype is finally fading. And if that's the case, then what comes next for the MCU might be even more unpredictable than anyone realizes.